When I hit the power lock and unlock, it doesn't work. There are 3 ways to operate the power locks. One is the switch on the door, and 2 and 3 are the 2 key fobs. I put new batteries in these, so I know these work. And the same problem happens regardless of which 3 of these power methods I use. So I know that the signal being sent to the MICU, which I believe is located underneath the dash somewhere, the signal that's getting sent to it from the module, like from this switch or from the key fobs, is working. Now, the MICU is like the logic, the brain, that then realizes that there's a signal being sent and then sends a new signal out to the doors to lock and unlock the doors. On the driver's side, I hear a clicking in the door, which leads me to believe that there's power in the door, or there's power right to the actuator, and the actuator, which has plastic gear teeth, is likely broken. However, on the passenger side, when I hit the lock and unlock button, I don't hear any clicking whatsoever in the door here, which leads me to believe that the signal being sent from the MICU under the steering wheel through the junction between the car and the door, and ultimately to the actuator, somewhere along the line the power is not getting, or the signal is not getting through. And most commonly it happens in the doors. So I think the problem on this side is a door lock actuator, the driver's side. And on the passenger side, I think the problem is a broken electrical line in the door jamb. So we'll do some investigating and see what we can find. So we're going to first start with the driver door. And what I've done is I've made sure that the window is all the way up. And the actuator that I have is actually a used actuator I got from a junkyard. So hopefully, cross my fingers that there's nothing wrong with it. The first thing that we're going to do is I have this very fine standard tip screwdriver. Anything small should probably work. And we're going to remove this cap first. There's one clip at the top right here, and there's 2 clips down here. In order to remove it, I'm going to use leverage and kind of pivot this towards me and down by pushing in and down. So I've broken it loose at the top, and now I just got to swing this out so you can see the clips kind of sit like that up in there. So that's why you got to push this part down and then swing this towards you, and there's the same but 2 clips on the bottom. And then it exposes those 2 Phillips screws, so we're going to remove those next. So I've removed these 2 Phillips screws here. That's what they look like from those 2 spots there. And now that that screw's removed, this whole kind of door handle trim piece and the door handle will kind of wiggle loose. Behind it, there's 2 things. One, the door lock mechanism is connected right there, and we have a connector right there for the power lock. So the way that this works is the black piece is part of the door handle. The brown piece is kind of like this clip that secures that silver arm. The silver arm continues all the way behind the door right there. And what we're going to do with this brown piece is, looking at it from top down, we're going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. And what that'll do is it'll remove the clip right here from holding the silver arm in place. And once we rotate the brown piece 90 degrees, this will be free floating, so we can then lift up the silver arm out of the black part that it then curls and heads down into. The way that this articulates is it rotates from this position 90 degrees out to that position, and it's this little chute in here that holds that arm down. Once I've rotated this piece outward and uncoupled this, I used a standard tip screwdriver to do that. I was then able to lift this piece up and get it out of that hole. So now this part is loose. So next we got to do is unhook this connector right here. So we're going to push down on this little white backing piece and then pull them apart. Alright, so I was able to disconnect this piece at the back here. The next thing we're going to do is, looking at the door here, this is the 2002 model, so it's like got like a little shelf in here where the door handle is. Other door handles from or doors from similar gen Civics have this as a complete pass-through, and there's a little gap right here you can push on and remove this lower piece. But what we're going to do is pop this cover up, exposing one Phillips head. So I just used my standard tip screwdriver to pop this cap. In order to get it to pop, you have to push inward towards the rear of the vehicle or the rear of the door, and then lift it, and it pivots upward in this orientation. There's clips on the back that just hold it in place, and that exposes that Phillips underneath. So we're going to unscrew that next. So this is what the Phillips head screw looks like that we just pulled out from underneath that cap right there. Now we're going to pull up on this piece right here. It should separate right here. There's a clip over here. I think there's another clip over here, and then like a guide or another clip over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pinch this piece inward and sort of rotate it this way, but we're not going to rotate it all the way, because to get it out here I believe it has to be slid this way and comes out like that. So let's just pinch this and pull it up, and here as well. So this piece came off as intended. It required a little bit of persuasion, but it finally did come off. I wiggled it upward, not so much rotating it, but more upward, and then twist the back end out this way. Once I have it kind of hanging a little loose, we have one connector right here, and then this whole piece will come out. So to remove that connector, just on the back, similar to the last one, there's that little red dot. Push down on that red dot, and that'll separate the white male end from the black female end. Okay, I just removed the connector as described, and if I rotate this kind of barrel end, you can sort of see how there's this clip right here that holds it in place. This is towards the driver, not the outside of the car. There's another clip right there, so 1, 2, that's what we had to remove. And then there's this little sort of locking clip right here that needs to be pushed inward or pinched, just kind of like that, to be able to, you have to pinch this in like that, and that'll get it to remove just like so. So once this piece is removed, the next thing we're going to do after is there's 2 Phillips screws, one right there and another one right there. So both of those 2 screws need to come loose. That'll disconnect the interior trim from the door shell on the outside. So the 2 screws that just came out of there and there look like this. One's a little bit more gummed up than the other. Might have to clean those out a little bit before we put them back in. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lift off the door, but prior to doing that we have to loosen and remove this kind of housing over the tweeter speaker. And if my memory serves me, there's 2 clips, one kind of right behind here and another one right over here. To get this removed, you have to kind of push upward on this plastic, just using your fingers, not the screwdriver. Push up over here, and then this will slide towards you, and this piece, the clip that's on this side, will just also slide towards you. I'll then have it sort of just hanging here by the electrical wires, because we just need it out of the way so that way we can move the door. So I'll just get a quick shot of this. I've pinched it loose, just kind of pulling it, working it towards me. If I rotate this out just like that, you see that silver piece kind of feeds right in through there, and that's what you have to pull out. There's also this black piece here which has kind of a groove on the bottom of it, and that sort of sits in that hole right there, which is what needs to be pushed upwards for it to come straight out, and then this piece just pops out. The way we'll remove the door is we'll start in this corner right here, and there's a bunch of tabs. There's probably about 8 or 10 of them around the bottom and up the side of the door just in here. I think there's also one over here somewhere. So we're going to start over here using our hands, getting it under the trim piece and just kind of pulling them towards the inside of the car, and we'll work our way up this way, working our way this way, breaking them all loose. And once all of the tabs are loose, without trying to break as little as possible or any, then the whole door will slide out of a sleeve that's along here. So once all the tabs are broken, or loose I should say, we slide the entire interior trim piece up. Also, we'll be careful to feed our electrical cables through so we don't rip anything by accident. So as I mentioned, I just put my fingers underneath and pulled this towards me, working my way very slowly to try to not break any pins, and just kind of pulled this. As you can see, it's a little loose now relative to the door, or the shell of the door, and I worked my way all along the bottom slowly one at a time, and then up to the side right here. I also worked my way up to this side, so now all the pins are broken, or not broken, but loose, hopefully, on this side. And there was also one in here that I just kind of pulled apart and separated. So now this entire trim door piece should slide straight up, which is why we removed that tweeter. Alright, the door is finally off. I don't believe I broke any clips. So if we sort of pivot around and look at the door as if we were looking at it from the outside, as you can see, there's a clip over here, speaker cover, clips along the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4 4 at the bottom, and then 2 more here at the towards where the latch is, and we have 1 clip kind of just beneath where the door handle was on the inside. And that's the inside of the door. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take an X-Acto knife and we're going to cut the plastic vertically here and then horizontally across there, so that way we can access inside the door here as well as some of the interior stuff as well. So there's a bunch of things to do next now that we've cut away the plastic right here. I was careful not to damage any of these lines. But what we're going to do next is we're going to remove this clip right here. Don't pull on the bottom part. You want to pull up at the top, and you want to kind of wiggle it side to side, but basically just pulling it straight out will loosen it. Don't pull it from the bottom, otherwise you'll break the white plastic as it meets the coupling right there. So with that sort of loose, other things that we're going to want to remove is this bolt right here. This bolt connects to a metal beam right there, and that metal is basically a support for that rubber housing which runs up along the door, and that's what the window slides into. So removing this bolt, we can then wiggle down the metal piece, separating it from the rubber right there, and then we'll be able to slide that out because we need to remove that. Also, this electrical line right here, it connects, as you can see, it curls, and then there's 2 connectors right here, one above, one below. Both of those plug in to the door lock actuator, and then if we scroll up just a tad, we can see that's what's also connecting to those electrical stuff in there. If we scroll up, the door handle is right here for the outside, and the lock for the key is also out there. So we're going to need to rotate that white plastic piece 90 degrees in a clockwise direction looking at the door, and then we're going to pull the metal rod that's sliding into it towards us. We're going to have to do it there. We're going to have to do the same thing right here, rotating it 90 degrees, that little white kind of translucent plastic, and then pulling this metal piece towards us out that way. So that'll free up these 2 metal linkages down to there. And you also have to unhook this clip right here, and there's a screw right here, and it holds a housing of this rubber piece right here, and this screw needs to be removed to be able to loosen this piece. So I undid the bolt that was right there, which is this bolt, and it sits just like that, holding that rubber sleeve up in the door to guide the window. The next thing we're going to remove is these 3 Phillips screws right here. So they're on the outside of the door. We got to loosen that, but we'll do that at the very end. These can be often very difficult to remove. Don't strip them. What you can do is use kind of like a Phillips bit and a ratchet, and the ratchet will give you leverage so that way you don't strip these. So once we're done with all that, we should be able to completely pull out the door lock actuator and the locking mechanism itself. So I fished the line for the locking mechanism out of the vehicle. This is the new one that I'm going to be using. Hopefully it's good. And this is the old one. The black piece is the door lock actuator where those 2 plugs fit into. This is the actual locking mechanism. This face is what faces into the door jamb. And what we're going to do is, Before we disassembled anything, what I did was I took a look at how everything sort of fits together. So that means, like, how does this connect down here? Just so that way if anything falls apart while I'm disassembling or plan to reassemble, I remember how things go. When I removed this piece and pulled it out here, I was worried that I broke something in here. It's possible that this is actually supposed to clip in. I'm not entirely sure. I wish I had noted that prior to, but I didn't. This, if we recall, this screw screws inside the door frame, and we couldn't see this because it was covered by a door piece. Inside on this side, maybe I'll flip it over to the back side. It sits in the vehicle in this orientation, and if we look on the outside, there's this little clip right here. So if we squeeze that down, this whole thing comes out just like so. The next thing we want to do, as we flip this over back to this side, remember how this piece goes and locks underneath here? We have to slide this black housing out first, so I'm going to rotate it on its side like so, and I'm just going to slide this cable out on this side right here, so it just slides out that way. We're going to remove this Phillips screw right here with our Phillips screwdriver, and then we're going to use a standard tip screwdriver to move the gold looking cap plate here up and up. So I was able to remove this cover right here. Now this arm came a little loose, but I was mindful to see that it hooks around this end like that, and the hook that's on it towards the upper side of the frame sits underneath that lever right there. So as this articulates back and forth, it moves that piece up and down. But this is just kind of loose in here without this piece in place. Finally, we get to remove the black door lock actuator, and on either side there's a white clip that we need to just pop this out, and there's another one on the other side right here. Once we pop out the white clip on either side, the black door lock actuator will swing out. So we just gotta do this while we slide it up, and then replace and swap. So I just popped this out just like that, and if we spin it over, there's this white little tab in here. It sits right in there, and as you lock and unlock the door, it pivots. So what we're going to do is when we install our replacement one, we're going to want to make sure that that white clip sits snugly right in there, and we might need to finagle it in there before we clip it and reassemble. So I've closed the circuit on the 2-prong or the lower connector, which I believe is what's used by the door locks to lock and unlock the door. The light turns on, which means we're getting power to the module, and if I hit the unlock button on the key fob, we see it flashes. Before I installed the door lock actuator, which is this black component right here, I plugged in the pigtails just to see if the new door lock actuator would work. So what we're going to see is this white thing spin. In order to get it to spin, we have to trick the car into thinking that the door is closed. So if you're looking at the driver door, if you're sitting in the car and you're looking to your left from the driver's seat, there's the latch plate. You have to push on this to pretend that the car door is locked. And then I'm going to push the lock and unlock button, and we're going to see if this thing wiggles, because the used one did not move at all. I think the plastic gears on the inside of the old one was broken and no longer working. So pushing on the door lock mechanism here and then trying to hit lock and unlock, we'll see how this works. So there, we got it to spin one way and the other way. Hopefully that's enough throw, and it'll spin enough and lock and unlock the car. Anyway, let's assemble the whole thing and see if it works. So I finally was able to get the new piece down to seat. The way I did it was I had to rock the sleeve that this white pin slides into, and the way I did that was with this kind of lever right here. I forced it to the unlock position so that way this slides. It clipped in nicely there and there. Now I'm just going to position this arm as it did around this piece right here and underneath this little clip right there. Once that's held in position, I'm going to then reattach this silver piece in here, sliding these two ends over the white clips right there, sliding this little tip piece right in there, and ultimately tightening down the screw that goes right there. Alright, this assembly is now back together. I even slid over this kind of rubber housing. It just protects this part of the assembly, and on this side it just clips right in right there. So now this is ready to go back in the car. I'm just going to finagle it into position. The first thing I'll likely do is put the 3 end bolts in to hold it in place, while I then hook up all of the other connectors and plugs and everything. Alright, so I just put the door lock assembly back in its place. I hooked up the 2 pigtails, and then up at the top I reassembled the 2 lines that go to the outside door handle as well as the door lock mechanism. So that white clip is down there. I haven't put down that clear clip right there, but it's snug in there. I also, prior to doing any of that, tightened down these 3 Phillips heads here to hold everything in place. Now before I reassembled everything, I wanted to test it out to make sure it would work. So the door is currently in the unlock position. It's open, and if I use this key fob, hit the lock button, it's now locked. Unlock, and it opens. Now it's a matter of reassembling everything that I disassembled. So, you know, putting this back in this clip right here, screwing in that plastic cover piece, or pinching it in that goes in over here, that screws into this bolt right here, attaching this wire to that hole right there, reattaching all of these cables, and basically just reassembling the door in the opposite order that we disassembled in. So I've got the inside of the door pretty much fully assembled. I just wanted to quickly show that I used tape to tape up where I had cut along. The driver's side door is now fully assembled, and it locks. If I hit the unlock button, opens up, door is all back together. Now on to this door. So on the passenger side door, I took it apart, I unconnected the lead. This is the side where the door lock actuator wasn't making any noise whatsoever, so I assumed it was a pinch line in there. I disconnected the rubber housing right in there, and I traced the line all the way through to here, where it ultimately then connects to the door lock actuator right here. And I tested it, and there is power coming to this. There's 12 volts coming. I even plugged this into the door lock actuator that I got for the driver's side, and it will actually spin that white little nozzle. So it's not actually a pinch line as I originally thought, so I'll have to replace this side exactly as I did on the driver's side, and because it's the exact same thing, I probably won't record myself doing that. The driver's side door lock actuator I got from a junkyard for $16. I couldn't find one for the passenger side, so I ordered one online for $13. Shipping for it was $11. All are in Canadian dollars with taxes included, running me a total of $40 to replace both door lock actuators, and I now have a running total of $944 into this project car.